Hi, everybody. Welcome once again to The NonProphets. This show is brought to you by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. I'm your host, Jeff D. Our normal co-host, Vic Farrow, is on call today, and so our producer, Russell Glasser, is sitting in as co-host.
Hi there.
Our opening music was The Bells Are Ringing by They Might Be Giants, a song which draws very interesting parallels between Christmas bells, the Morlock siren from H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, and the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. We're live December 29, 2001. We had a little false start there a second ago. I don't know exactly how the changeover between our first false start and our restart of the show worked, but if it sounds like we're just starting here, it's because there was a bit of a technical glitch. The ACA has weekly meetings Sunday mornings at the Hot Jumbo Bagel Shop at 307 West 5th Street in Austin, Texas at 7:30 a.m., except for the first Sunday of each month when we have our lecture series at 11 a.m. in the Longhorn Room of Fur's Cafeteria at North Cross Mall. Our next lecture will be on January 6th. There is no speaker scheduled for that Sunday. Instead, we will be holding a planning session for our upcoming church-state separation rally on the Texas State Capitol steps, which is scheduled for January 12th. ACA board meetings take place at 10, right before the regular meeting on the second Sunday of every month. The Godless Gamers, which is a spin-off group of the ACA, meets every Monday night at 7 p.m. at my place to play board games, card games, occasionally role-playing games, karaoke, videos, what have you. ACA Happy Hour is at Antonio's near Highway 35 and 183, again in Austin, Texas, every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. If you get there and don't see anybody else around, just hang out. Lots of people trickle in as the night goes on. For more information, you can call our voicemail at area code 512-371-2911 or visit the ACA website at www.atheist-community.org. This is a live show. And again, we've been announcing for weeks that our plan is to install a 800 line so we can take live calls. That's still not in, but in the meanwhile, you can log on to the Atheist Network chat room and chat along with other listeners of the show while we do our broadcast, and we monitor that chat room and try to respond to questions that are posted there. That's www.atheistnetwork.com. And just click on the chat link. Let's see. On Saturday, January 12 at 11 o'clock a.m., the ACA will sponsor a state church separation rally on the south steps of the state capitol in honor of the 200th anniversary of Jefferson's famous letter to the Danbury Baptists, in which he first referred to the, quote, wall of separation between church and state. Representative Elliot Neistat has agreed to be the state official sponsor. We hope to have both ACA speakers and some representatives from other groups. I believe there is a Americans United representative coming and a Unitarian. We will announce more information on that as it gets closer to the actual date. Eat More Christians t-shirts are available. I don't know, we're of course broadcasting all over the world, and not every place has these fine, what are they called? What chicken restaurants is that? That has the
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A. Not every place, even in the United States, has Chick-fil-A restaurant chain, but that is a Christian fundamentalist fried chicken fast food place, and their advertising campaign involves these three cows standing on the billboards with, thank you, Russell. Standing on billboards with hastily and clumsily erected signs in their hooves saying "Eat more chicken." See, it's a joke. See, because it's a chicken place and cows don't want you to eat the chickens anyway. So we have. They want you to eat the chickens. But we have the Eat More Christians t-shirts featuring three lions holding badly scrawled, hastily erected signs in their paws saying "Eat More Christians." Figure it out. Now I'm going to turn it over to Russell to start doing the news. Russell, what do you got?
Well, I've got a couple of pieces of news.
We didn't do the URL for that.
Right.
The address for the T-shirts, which you can order online, is www.cafepress.com. That's CAFEPRESS.com/nogods. One word, NOGODS. There is a fee for these shirts, but every penny raised from sales of those shirts will go to helping to fund this fine audio broadcast. And now back over to Russell.
Okay. There's a few things going on in the news right now. A New Mexico church is planning a Harry Potter book burning.
Woohoo!
And when it's a slow news day, boy, there's nothing like a good old-fashioned book burning. This is in Alamogordo, New Mexico, where I've actually visited a couple of times for speech tournaments when I was in high school. A New Mexico church plans to burn Harry Potter books because they're an abomination to God, the church pastor said on Wednesday. Pastor Jack Brock said he would have a holy bonfire on Sunday at the Christ Community Church in Alamogordo in southern New Mexico to torch books about the fictional teenage wizard who is wildly popular with young people. These books encourage our youth to learn more about witches, warlocks, and sorcerers, and those things are an abomination to God and to me.
And to him. I am shocked to learn that these books are an abomination to Pastor Jack Brock.
Yeah.
Because I care so much about what Pastor Jack Brock has to say.
Yes, Pastor Jack Brock says that Harry Potter books are going to destroy the lives of many young people. Now,
when's that going to happen? Now, Harry Potter books have been... No, I mean, when's this destruction of the lives of young people going to start? These books have been wildly popular now for, 4 years?
Right. This is hardly news that Christians don't really like Harry Potter, which, it's interesting to hear the kind of criticisms that they've leveled against it. One example that you can check out right now if you're interested is to go to www.capalert.com, which is one of my favorite evangelism sites for the entertainment value. They do movie reviews from a Christian fundamentalist perspective, and you can always see how badly every movie rates on a variety of topics that the person reviewing the movies doesn't like. He writes down every single occurrence of the words shit and fuck in the movies that have them, and he writes down everything that he would consider offensive to God. And of course, when he reviewed the new Harry Potter movie, you can see that he basically went down a laundry list of the same things that Christians find objectionable about the books. Such as saying that magic is a good thing. Well, it's fiction, guys. But what I find really amusing is when they say things like, oh, well, there's this quote in there that says, there is no good or evil, only power. Care to take a guess who says that in the book?
Not a clue.
It's the bad guy. It's Voldemort speaking through the mouthpiece of the guy he's possessed, and this is the guy who loses in the end. But the fact that he says this at all is apparently offensive to God, because the only good Christian books, as we know, have absolutely no conflict whatsoever within them, have no bad guys, and basically have characters romping through meadows with fluffy bunnies and saying how much they love Jesus, and then the story ends.
I should add that in another article about this upcoming book burning that I was able to find, it said, Brock said he has not personally read any of the books, nor has he seen Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone in the movie theaters. He has no clue what he's talking about. The books have come under fire in a few U.S. communities for supposedly encouraging devilish thoughts among the young, but author J.K. Rowling, in an earlier statement issued by her publisher, called the criticisms absurd. Quote, I have met thousands of children now, and not even one time has a child come up to me and said, Ms. Rowling, I'm so glad I've read these books because now I want to be a witch, she said.
On the other hand, you can find some news stories if you go to TheOnion.com, where this is a classic case of gullibility because if you're not familiar with TheOnion.com, they're a humor newspaper that does fake news every week. And they ran this fantastic story a few months ago that was headlined something like Harry Potter sparks a rise in Satanism, and it has a bunch of ostensible quotes from J.K. Rowling saying, well, people should be praising me for leading children to Satan. Proving it, as usual, that fundamentalists can't take a joke, this news story has started to be quoted all over the place as a real news story in fundamentalist publications. It's a riot.
Awesome. Oddly enough, in the article that I read, many religious conservatives are praising The Lord of the Rings, claiming that it promotes Christian values. Now, apparently, the author J.R.R. Tolkien was a Catholic, practicing Catholic, but I wonder whether any of these Christians who are praising The Lord of the Rings for promoting Christian values have ever read the bluntly non-Christian Middle-earth creation story in the prequel to Lord of the Rings called The Silmarillion. Now, very few people at all have read that because it's very difficult to get through. It reads like ancient epic poetry. But it is clear that J.R.R. Tolkien was not erecting, just a parallel to Christianity here. What else have we got?
Another last comment I want to make about book burning is I wonder if they're going to burn books that they already have, or if they're going to go out and buy a whole bunch of Harry Potter books.
I can answer that. According to Pastor Jack Brock, it says, just a moment, Brock said his Christmas Eve sermon was titled "The Baby Jesus or Harry Potter," and described the book burning as part of an effort to encourage Christians to remove everything from their homes that prevents them from communicating with God. That salt shaker there, that's stopping you from communicating God. No, morons, you can't communicate with God because there ain't no such dude.
So, if you already happen to have Harry Potter books lying around, is that it? Or demonic rock music or porn, then just bring them over to the bonfire. Is that the way it goes? Okay. Let's see. What else have we got here? Oh, an interesting story from the other side of the ocean. In Dublin, an Irish Protestant minister who does not believe in Christmas or that Jesus was the Son of God has been suspended from his post for 3 months to reflect on his statements. Andrew Furlong, Dean of Clonmacnoise and Rector of Trim in County Meath, startled worshippers on in his quiet Irish Midlands parish when his unconventional views on traditional Christian teachings were aired in articles published in his website. I don't believe the traditional understanding of Christmas that God took human form and was born as a babe in Bethlehem, he told Reuters on Monday. Now, what's interesting about this news story, I thought, is how differently this sort of thing is handled in Europe as compared to the way it would be in the United States. Because, this guy basically said that the whole underlying teaching of Christianity is a lie, right? He said Jesus wasn't the Son of God. Christmas isn't the celebration of Jesus' birth. It's all basically a myth. And what was their response? And apparently he's been holding these beliefs for 30 years, according to this article. And their response was, did they ban him from the ministry for life? No. They suspended him for 3 months to basically said, go sit in the corner and think about what you said. It makes you think that we need more established religion here in the States, if that's the overall effect that it's got.
I just find it hilarious that they would employ a person whose job it is, because of his beliefs, is then knowingly lying to people automatically as a result of his job, right? If he's going to be a minister, be a priest, then this is what he has to tell people. But he doesn't believe it. Astounding. Afghan courts aim to use Islamic law. They do not plan to cut off the hands of thieves or to shoot criminals in football stadiums, practices common under the harsh rule of the ousted Taliban militia, but the new legal authorities in Afghanistan say justice in their country will still be very much based on traditional Islamic law rather than an imported Western-style system. The new post-Taliban Justice Minister and the Supreme Court Chief, both scholars of Islamic Sharia law, said in interviews on Thursday that the Muslim legal system will be applied properly, ending the excesses of what they called the un-Islamic Taliban. Quote, "Don't worry, we will not repeat the cruel practices of the Taliban," unquote. Mr. Karimi said the harsh practices of the Taliban were based on poor interpretation of Islam. For example, thieves' hands could be cut off, but only if society were economically strong, a condition clearly not met in Afghanistan. Wait a minute, this article just opened by saying they don't plan to cut off thieves' hands. But this guy is saying, well, you can cut off thieves' hands, but only if society is economically strong. Quote, "If he stole because he is poor, we do not cut off his hands. We can rehabilitate him. So, if you're rich under the new government and you steal, they will cut off your hands." Across town, the new head of the Supreme Court, Fazi Wahab, received visitors in an office lined with handsome editions of Islamic law books and a curved sword on the wall above his desk. He condemned the Taliban's harsh justice, but gave a different explanation of why it was improper. Quote, "The Taliban chopped off people's hands without proper evidence and beat people in the street for no reason," he said. "The hands should be cut off only if the thief confesses to the crime." And apparently...
Can we torture them to make them confess?
I don't know, but apparently by implication, it's also okay for them to beat people in the street as long as those people have confessed. Quote, "People can be executed, but not in the street or the bazaar." People can be executed, Russell, but not in the street or the bazaar, only in secret places where onlookers cannot see.
I feel much better now.
Asked whether the new authorities would call for the death penalty for people accused of preaching Christianity, as the Taliban did in the case of 8 Western aid workers and 16 of their Afghan colleagues, Wahab paused for thought. "We cannot say. We have yet to encounter such a situation, but when we do, we will decide." Oh, man. Oh, man. That is so horrifying.
Oh, boy.
So what have we done? We got attacked by these lunatics in Afghanistan. Then we go in there and we crush the stupid government, admittedly insane, crazy, lunatic government that was running the place and protecting the people that attacked us. And now what are we doing? We're standing back and allowing people just a hair's breadth less crazy to take over the legal legal system in Afghanistan.
Well, don't forget where the Taliban got into power from in the first place.
Well, that's a good point. I don't know that we did quite the same thing with them, but close. Here's some local Austin news. Group qualifies as a religion. Comptroller vows an appeal. Judge. Members do not require belief in a supreme being to be a tax-exempt religious organization. Austin, Texas, an Austin group that does not require its members to believe in a supreme being still functions as a traditional religious organization and is entitled to tax exemption, a state judge has now ruled. Warning that the case could have dire consequences, State Comptroller Carol Keaton-Rylander vowed to appeal the decision as far as we have to appeal it, unquote. The case brought by the Ethical Society of Austin is largely a symbolic one. The group owns no property and pays very little in state taxes. We know these people. We've got members of the Ethical Society that stop by Atheist Community of Austin on a regular basis. I know them well, a bunch of very fine folks. For a while we had joint childcare things going on. Like Sunday afternoon, get the kids together from both groups, because
When was that?
that was before you got in the group, Russell.
Okay.
where we were big enough to have a few families with kids, but not big enough to have enough kids to justify our own thing. That went on for a while, and I don't quite know why it stopped. Groups that get the religious exemption do not have to pay any levies, including sales tax and local property taxes. The case began in June 1997 when the Ethical Society, which meets on alternate Sundays in rented space at an activity center for senior citizens, was briefly granted tax-exempt status by former Comptroller John Sharp. In his 6-page ruling, State District Judge Paul Davis said that ESA, in its pursuit of the ethical ideal, acts like a traditional religion and functions as a traditional religious organization for its members. Texas law provides little guidance in determining what a religion is, what is a religion and what isn't, Davis said. Davis reviewed conflicting textbook definitions of religion. Noting that ethical society groups have been granted religious tax exemption in other states, Davis decided the Austin group is a religion for state tax purposes. The Ethical Society has their own website at www.esoa.org. Again, that's www.esoa.org, where they have their own announcement about this and a little background on their court case. I don't think that our government should be giving religious groups tax exemptions at all. But if they're going to, if groups are going to be able to get a tax exemption merely on the basis of what they believe, then clearly separation of church and state dictates that it can't matter what it is that is the core belief of that group.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the same deal that we're having with, what was it called? Faith-based funding, a nice little euphemism for giving handouts to religious groups. Basically they're hoping to give preferential treatment to their particular religion, and they have to cloak themselves in saying, okay, well, it's for all religions. But the inconvenient thing is that once they say that, all those religions want to get in on the act, including Wiccans and Scientologists and so on.
As well they should.
And now atheists.
Yeah, absolutely. The Atheist Community of Austin sent a letter to the Bush administration's Office of Faith-Based Nonsense, and inquiring whether our group would be able to receive tax-exempt status or government funding, in spite of the fact that we don't believe in any gods. We never heard back. That's it for the news. I want to jump right ahead here and get to our Rapture Report. This is a thing that we do periodically to keep people informed as to the latest crazy religious and New Age predictions of the end of the world. This is our last show of the year 2001. Is that correct, Russell?
Yes, which means we can now officially say that we've got 2 days left for any 2001 predictions of the end of the world.
Exactly right, and there's a whole spate of them here that were supposed to happen sometime this year, so I want to get to that. First of all, here's we always open with a prediction of the end of the world that does not have a particular date assigned to it, but when it was issued, the people who issued it simply said that this was going to happen soon. According to Isaac Asimov's Book of Facts, published in 1979, an Assyrian clay tablet dating to approximately 2800 BC was unearthed, bearing these words, quote, "Our earth is degenerate in these latter days. There are signs that the world is speedily coming to an end. Bribery and corruption are common." Unquote. This was one of the earliest examples of the perception of moral decay in society being interpreted as a sign of the imminent end. Now, that was the year 2800 BC, so we're talking 4,800 years ago. Nitwits were claiming that because people were so degenerate now, and there were signs and portents, therefore it was clear that the end was going to come soon. Well, if 4,800 years is soon, then they've got some startling new definition of the word soon in Assyrian that I am not familiar with.
All that time and they were still wrong? Amazing! it's very safe to make those kind of predictions if they're as long as they're more than 200 years out, because if you're wrong, who's going to know?
Yeah, absolutely. None of them realized it. Okay, now here are the predictions that have failed since the last time we did a Rapture Report. First of all, we got to jump back to September 11. Now, nobody predicted, there was no standing prediction of an end of the world or even the beginning of some horrifying conflict on September 11, and that's the failure. One of the most tragic and significant days in U.S. history, the World Trade Center was destroyed and the Pentagon attacked by madmen, causing thousands of deaths, billions of dollars in damage, untold suffering, and possibly plunging the world into war. Well, it definitely did. If there's any day that the doomsayers should have foreseen, it's this day. However, nobody was able to predict this event or pinpoint this day. Some gullible people insist that Nostradamus predicted the event, but those claims have been debunked. I believe we talked about that on an earlier show. December 8, the author of the Ninth Wave website is convinced that the church would be raptured on this date and millions would disappear mysteriously. People would explain away the disappearance as alien abductions.
Which is so much less plausible than explaining away the disappearances as people magically ascending into heaven.
Absolutely. December 19, Marilyn Adjee. This woman, like every month or two, has a new prediction of the end of the world. And ho-hum, here's another one. According to Marilyn Adjee, the tribulation was supposed to start on December 19. Okay, still pending. These are the ones that have got 2 days left to happen. Okay, here we go.
2 days.
2 days. Keep your eyes peeled. Legend has it. No, we're going to skip that one. Pyramidologist George Barbarin, we're skipping that one because it actually does not specifically say 2001. It's a misprint in my notes. We're not trying to weasel out of a legitimate world-end prediction. Pyramidologist George Barbarin, subscribing to the concept of the Great Week, predicted that Christ's millennium would begin in 2001.
Well, how do you know it hasn't begun?
Well, in a certain sense, he's right, because everybody's frickin' millennium began in 2001. That's when the millennium technically happens. According to the Unarius Academy of Science, the Pleiadian Space Brothers will land their UFOs near El Cajon, California, ushering in a new age. Earth changes maven Gordon Michael Scallion predicted major Earth changes taking place between 1998 and 2001, culminating in a pole shift. So everybody get your compasses out, your magnetic compasses, and keep a close eye on them, because when those needles start shifting, that means the poles are doing the same.
I thought he was implying that my pole would shift. Never mind.
That went right over my head, Russell. Nation of Islam numerologist Taineta Muhammad figured that 2001 would be the year of the end. Jack Van Impe said that 2001 will see the start of the Great Tribulation. Political chaos, natural disasters, nuclear war, and the worldwide rise of Islam will usher in mankind's final hour. Now, Islam has been rising for many years now. There is always political chaos and always natural disasters, but we got 2 days for that nuclear war to happen. Not that Pakistan and India aren't trying their best to make sure that it does. A man calling himself the Last Adam has a website where he says, "The hour is coming this year, 2001. This earth will be destroyed these year by God. This is an election between the good and evil." Clearly,
I'm voting for good. I don't know about you.
Clearly, English is not the Last Adam's first language. This is accompanied by a claim that Jesus is a UFO alien and some of the worst HTML coding ever seen by man. And that's today's Rapture Report. Keep your eyes peeled, folks, because, that world of ours could end any moment. And those wise folks 4,800 years ago in Assyria knew that as well as anyone. Again, I want to remind anybody out there listening to us over the internet, we're past the halfway point in our show, but if you want to interact with us, ask questions, or just chat with other people that are listening in, you can go to www.atheistnetwork.com, click on the chat link, and join in the fun. All right. Well, that's Rapture Report. Now, I introduced last week the critical thinking series that I was doing, going point by point through the rules of critical thinking and telling people how to do that. But we just had this holiday. The Christians just had a big holiday, and my parents are Christians.
Yes.
And well, my mom took it upon herself to send me some Christian propaganda as a Christmas present.
How very thoughtful. Give the gift of saving your soul.
Yeah, I didn't think so. But anyway, this prompted a phone call from me to her. She knows that I'm an atheist. My parents, in case you have been tuning into the show, my parents are both ministers. Started out as Methodists and retired from that only to find a what do they call it, a non-denominational church that they are now managing. And they know that that my wife and I are Christians, or that my wife and I are atheists, excuse me. And we've been basically just keeping very quiet about it, not getting in their faces with it, and just sort of gritting our teeth and taking it whenever they would bring up religion. But I really thought that this was way off base for her to use her own religion's holiday to send us what effectively amounts to propaganda. So I gave her a call. The result of that call was basically me telling her, Mom, look, I don't send you atheist books. Don't send me Christian books. I respect your right to believe whatever you want. Respect our right to believe whatever I want. And she launched into this whole, well, you have to understand, this is who I am. And I said, fine, be that person, but don't rub it in our faces. She claimed that she's really interested in understanding all points of view, at which point I had to remind her that as of my last visit to them, they had absolutely 0 books on atheism in their giant wall full of books about various points of view on religion. At which point she said, well, no, I guess I'm not that interested in that. And so I called her on her claim that she actually wants to understand all points of view, and the upshot is that we agreed that I would read this book that she sent me, and in exchange I would send her a book on atheism. I'm still hunting around for that. If anybody's got any advice out there, what would be a good book to acquaint a religious person with what atheism really is? I'd be interested in your opinions. I'm right now leaning toward What is Atheism by Douglas Kruger, but he can get a little bombastic in a way that I think might just turn her off before she actually gets the point. So I haven't entirely decided. There's also a great essay by Isaac Asimov on the subject of life after death, and I'm definitely going to photocopy that from this other source and send her that. But that's only a few pages and doesn't really get into atheism. Anyway, so here's my review of this book sent to me by my mom for Christmas. The book, which she insists is not really that much about God, but mostly about science. It's called The Hand of God, Thoughts and Images Reflecting the Spirit of the Universe. It's basically a book of Hubble Space Telescope images accompanied by little cute quotes taken out of context from various authors, and starting with a 25 page introduction by a woman named Sharon Begley. Now, as soon as I sat down to read this book, I noticed that name, Sharon Begley, and I thought, boy, that sounds awfully familiar. So I went back through my files and found an issue of Newsweek from July 20, 1998, with the title story, Science Finds God. Now, when this magazine came out, I wrote an...
Question, is Asimov's essay online?
Somebody's asking if Asimov's essay is online. As far as I know, it is not. I have it in a book called, I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll tell you next week. Anyway, this Newsweek, when this Newsweek magazine came out, I wrote an essay rebutting the story in here, which claims that science has found God, and that essay is posted on my website at www.io.com/unigames, that's UNIGAMES/commentary/072498.html. www.io.com/unigames/commentary/072498.html. And I'm not going to read you that whole essay. You can go there and read it yourselves. Basically, this article starts off claiming that there's a big movement in science supporting theism, and then gave a bunch of very, very bad arguments from people who are not top scientists and not offering scientific evidence, but rather theistic interpretations of science, which does not necessarily imply anything of the kind. Well, you'll never guess who wrote this 20-page introduction to The Hand of God. It's Sharon Begley again, this editor from Newsweek. Now, I can't say for sure, but I'm suspicious of the ethics of a news magazine editor writing a big glowing story about this supposed trumped-up movement in science to justify theism, then getting paid money by the Templeton Foundation, which is the group going around claiming that there's this big movement in science, getting paid money by them to write the introduction to their book. But she did. And here's a few snippets, just to give you a sense of what's in here. Inside the back cover, it says, together, the images in The Hand of God and the accompanying reflections encourage a sense of awe and perhaps purpose in this age often hostile to both. We cannot, quote, "we cannot take a single step toward heaven," French mystic Simone Weil once said. "If, however, we look heavenward for a long time, God comes and takes us up," unquote. Perhaps it is time to look up once again. So much for my mother's claim that this book is not about God. It is clearly here for the purpose of proselytizing. Okay, so here's Sharon Begley. Inside, wait a minute, page 6 of the book. This is like on page 5, there's the foreword and a picture from the Hubble telescope. On page 6, there is the first of these little out-of-context snippets accompanied by a Hubble telescope image. And the quote is from Mark Twain, who was an atheist. How very ironic. Okay, Sharon Begley, just to give you a little bit of taste of this. Okay. Maybe the indifferent heavens will offer a sign, however small, that there is a world beyond the world we see. That there is meaning in the void and a harmony between the mind of man and the limitless reaches of space. Closing the gap of that limitless reach have been the 20th century's high-powered telescopes. Namesake of Hubble, remote offspring of Galileo, today's space-based machinery brings us images so far beyond what we could ever imagine that they have changed dramatically our view of the heavens and the origins of the universe. And yet, ironically, the more focused the portraits from deep space, the more meticulous and specific our calculations, the more it seems improbable, even impossible, that our world could have been an arbitrary coincidence.
According to whom?
Yeah, who is saying arbitrary coincidence? Let's see. In the skies themselves and in what cosmologists are learning about them, the armies of the mind and the forces of the spirit are searching for common ground. This is false. Mainstream scientists are mostly uninterested in accommodating religion this way. That's not how science works. The movement to reconcile has been driven by religionists, with a very few religious scientists. The vast majority of National Academy of Science scientists are atheists and have been for many decades. Let's see. There's a little Walt Whitman poem in here. Yeah, that's scientific proof. Let's see. It says, Whitman was not alone when he complained that the learned astronomer's discoveries had spoiled the mystery and romance of the stars. His poem describes the science most of us know. It is a science that has traditionally encroached on the terrain of religion, offering a natural and often dry explanation for what had previously been regarded as wondrous and even supernatural. It is a science that obliterates mysteries and replaces them with a differential question. She's missing the point. If science can demystify these things, then they never indicated that there was a God in the first place, right? If you're complaining that science is making mysteries go away is just complaining that science is closing the gaps where religionists have traditionally stuck their God.
Yeah, it's just an attempt to have it both ways, basically, because if things turn out to be so complicated that we haven't found explanations for them yet, then they will jump in and say, oh, well, the only possible explanation for it is God. On the other hand, if we do figure out explanations for those same things, reducing them to basic simplistic laws, then she'll say, like she's saying now, isn't the human mind amazing that it can unravel these mysteries? That must prove that there's a God.
Yeah, I haven't even gotten to that part of her introduction yet. Let's move on from where I left off. Here's Sharon Begley again. It is a science that addresses totally different questions than religion. Science explains the world. God is behind the world. At which point I jump in and say, hold on, prove that your God exists. You know, you can't say that God is behind the world until you've proven that he's actually there. Sharon Begley again. Science explains what is. Religion offers a sense of what ought to be. But wait a minute. Anybody can give us their opinion about what ought to be. What gives religion any special authority in that area? Well, nothing. And yet it was not always so. For most of the previous 2,000 years, science and religion were engaged in a common quest for understanding, each taking strength from the other. Well, tough. The same went for astronomy and astrology. Astronomy eventually told us that the Doctor exerts a greater gravitational pull on the newborn than any of the planets. So astrology was bunk all along, and so is religion. Just because two ideas move along together for a while, and then one becomes accepted and one falls by the wayside, does not mean that the one that fell by the wayside is getting unfair treatment. It's only unfair treatment if, in fact, it can be proved that astrology or theism are true in the first place. Well, the reason why they're falling by the wayside is they haven't been proved true. Then she goes, she conveniently, she goes through the early scientists and, wait a minute, she talks about the early, religious scientist. She says, Isaac Newton did not doubt that in uncovering the laws of motion and universal gravitation, he was being granted a glimpse at the operating manual of the vast machine called creation that God had assembled and kept running. Of course, she conveniently ignores the ugly Galileo incident, and they also burned Giordano Bruno for suggesting that there could be life on other planets. So, She's clearly playing out only the facts that serve her goal of convincing people to believe this stuff. Let's see. These early scientists trusted that their inquiries would yield knowledge because they believed that God had created a rational, ordered world, a world governed by laws and not by chaos or divine whim, a world in which discoveries, therefore, had universal meaning. If an apple fell here for one reason, then that reason applied throughout the universe. The world was not an endless sequence of unique cases. Without the confidence that there existed a consistent, rational, eternal set of principles governing nature, there wouldn't be much point in doing science, whose goal is, after all, uncovering the uncovering of the regularities of nature that we have come to call laws. Okay, Miss Begley, but religion used to claim that it was all special cases, and that an omnipotent hand guided everything. So, just because there was a shift in viewpoint among people who were religious does not mean that religion was right all along. The new viewpoint adopted by religious scientists was different from that handed down from the original believers. Let's see. But the rise of science had already brought with it Copernicus's sun-centered solar system, which knocked Earth from the center of creation. Next came Newton's physics, which made the universe an inanimate wind-up machine. The Enlightenment's focus on reason as the supreme human power, its philosophies of reductionism and materialism, and its rejection of authority and revelation and text were all antithetical to religion. The truth was fraying. Again, she's missing the point. Religion was wrong about the earth being the center of the universe, and wrong about God directly guiding everything. She talks like religion is the victim here. No, mankind is the victim of religion's many, many falsehoods. In 1859, Charles Darwin, this is her again, in 1859, Charles Darwin published in On the Origin of Species his theory of evolutionary biology, which seemed to dethrone the creator and replace him with blind chance. Straw man fallacy, evolution does not function by blind chance. Darwin, more than any other scientist, had dislodged humans from the apex of the tree of life, and I would inject and say, and rightly so, yes, once again, religion was wrong.
There is no apex of the tree of life, that's the point.
Yeah, exactly. And yet religion was telling us that there was, right? That mankind was the most important pinnacle of everything. That that God had created.
It's a real insecurity, that leads people to have religion that basically requires them to believe that they're all special, that they're all the personal pet of the creator. I think life is great, but, I don't have to have this Superman who, we're his favorites. That's just not necessary.
Right. Yeah, well, check this out. The biologist's view of life as a series of complex chemical reactions did not lie easily with the theologian's idea of life as a divine gift. If everything from the creation of the planets to the eruption of a volcano to the leukemia that takes the life of a child is seen as having, in fact or theory, a natural cause and explanation, then it seemed like there was no room left for God to act in the world. Now, excuse me, but I gotta ask, would Ms. Begley rather have her God giving that child leukemia? That is the obvious implication of this question. You can't bitch about how science is taking away the places where God was supposed to act without noticing that a lot of those places where your religion taught that your God was acting are places where he's being a dick. Let's see. For centuries, theologians had appealed to the God of the gaps. Oh, this is awfully ironic. This God is the one whom you offer in explanation for phenomena that otherwise have none. Did the rains come? God brought them. Did the sun rise? God lifted it. Did life arise? God created it. Well, Miss Begley, that's all that any God is until his existence is proved. And notice, again, how utterly wrong religion has been over and over and over again. Now, I'm going to cut away from this because we're running out of time, but just a quick tour through the Hubble Space Telescope photographs in this book and the out-of-context quotations that are stuck in here. Page 32, quote from Albert Einstein. And Einstein taken out of context once again, pretending like he believed in a God who was a guy. Who was a guy. That's twice they bring up Einstein. Then there's some Bible quotes. A lot of other people who I don't recognize, so I won't comment on them. Oh, Terry Pratchett, atheist. Einstein again. More Bible quotes. Let's see. Carl Sagan identified himself as an agnostic. All these people or quotes have been taken out of context and set alongside these Hubble Space Telescope images as if any of this was the slightest bit of evidence that there is a God. I already mentioned that they did Mark Twain at the beginning. I should also jump in and say that they take Stephen Hawking out of context.
Can you find the quote from H.L. Mencken? I like that one.
H.L. Mencken! H.L. Mencken. Now, if any of you have seen any version of the play Inherit the Wind, which is a fictionalized account of the monkey trial.
As a matter of fact, the oldest version with Spencer Tracy just came out on DVD. I'm looking forward to getting that.
Awesome, that's one of my favorite films. The witty, smart alecky reporter character is the H.L. Mencken character. Stuart Kaufman, atheist. Anyway, H.L. Mencken. I'm looking up the quote.
Actually, our time's up.
Our time is up. We gotta go. All right, I will do a little bit more about this next week. The book was called The Hand of God, from the Templeton Foundation Press. Introduction by Sharon Begley, edited by Michael Reagan. It's a load of crap. I'm going to let you all go again. Thanks very much for listening. We will be back next week. Yes, Russell?
Bye, everybody. And just thanks, everybody in the chat room, both AOL and IRC, for participating. We had about 20 people chatting in various places, so... Hi, everyone, and bye.
Yeah, thanks very much for listening, and we'll let you go with our with this week's music.